What's up, everybody? I'm Chuck Roque with another episode of Reely, presented by FlixFan Official. We are here in my new studio space in my garage, a little more secluded, so hopefully I can put out more content and cuss and say bad words without my parents listening and feeling ashamed about what I do. I'm happy you're here with me. I always want to shoot this podcast. I always want to be talking about movies, but now that I set this up, this past week, I lost that energy that I had when I set this up. And that energy I had came from Dune, it came from Squid Game, and it came from Titan and Mandy. And then I was trying to muster up the charisma to do another podcast today. And I couldn't really figure it out. But at lunch today, my dad put on Pig with Nicolas Cage. And I had not thought that I would watch all that movie. It's been on my list, but being a neon picture without sounding like too much of a pompous film dick, it was kind of like one of those things where it's like, oh, I might have already seen this. Something like Raw. Even though Raw is very original, some of the beats are kind of played, if that makes sense. But without talking too much shit on this movie, I wanted to say Pig was incredible. It inspired me to make this video that I'm making right now. It was that good. I didn't think I was going to watch the whole movie. I had first seen this trailer a couple months ago, and it seemed intriguing, but it seemed intriguing in the way that anything seemed coming out of quarantine, where it's like, oh, it's a new movie, and Nicolas Cage is playing something not out of the ordinary, like a not big budget. He's doing an indie film. But it seemed a little A24-ish, again, without sounding like a dick. It seemed a little like style over substance, but I was pleasantly surprised. I was pretty emotionally connected to these characters. It passed my little sidewall test. I might have mentioned this before, but anytime I'm in a theater specifically, and I start to notice the sides of the walls, that's when the movie sucks. That's when I realize, okay, my attention's being lost. The story you're telling me is not worth the hour or 2 hours you're telling me. Because now that I'm looking at the walls, I notice, okay, there's other more interesting things than what you're presenting to me. So that's my wall test, quote unquote. Pig passed that. It was slow at first, and as soon as I started to get to know more Alex Wolff's character and his relationship with his dad, I really started to connect. But little synopsis before we get into it. If you haven't seen the movie, Pig is about Nicolas Cage, who is a famous or infamous chef. He's very talented, that's all we know, and he's been living in the woods by himself for a long time. That's where we meet him. We know he has a prized truffle pig. For those who aren't savvy with it, truffles are a type of fungus. I could be getting this wrong, but from what I know, it's like a mushroom. It's a specific delicacy that certain pigs and I think dogs have noses for, and they're very valuable and worth a lot of money because the food itself is very valuable. It's a rare food, and so I liked right off the bat a screenplay that takes us into a world that we don't normally get to see, which is this fine dining in Portland. And it's interesting because we're at a space right now where Marvel movies seem tried and boring. And that's incredible. If you would have told people in the 50s that a movie about a pig would be more compelling than a movie about the Avengers, pretty hard pressed to believe that. And even now, this is why I wanted to talk about this. A lot of people don't share my movie taste, which is bizarre because I have the best movie taste. I've dedicated my life to movies. And if you want to argue about a movie, I'm here and I'm waiting. And we have the podcast just for that reason, because you're probably wrong and I'm probably right. And it's probably not even a bias. It's probably just an objective you're wrong and you need to learn about Stanislavski or framing or film grammar. And I'm happy to do that. And maybe I won't be so smug. I wanted to bring this up because I haven't done the one on Mandy or Titan yet, and hopefully now that I have all this chutzpah, I'll be motivated to make one of those. But Mandy was a movie with Nicolas Cage that has been on my list for a while, about 2 years now. It's supposed to be a crazy psychedelic horror revenge thriller. All I knew is that all my indie, weird, artsy film friends who are Venn diagrams of films kind of overlap a lot, they all enjoyed it. I didn't talk to someone who didn't like Mandy. I watched it, I loved it. I was amazed by the colors. I liked the cult plot. I liked how simple it was. I liked the revenge. Very entertained through and through. And then I brought the film over to my friends, Jordan and Daryush, who I might have mentioned in the Dune podcast or the Squid Game one. I don't think so. I gotta bring them up on the... Well, they're getting brought up now. These are my boys, and I spend, a lot of my time hanging out at their house, and they're good people. But when I played Mandy, all of them unanimously didn't like it. Jay, Daryush, and Jay's lady. And I was shocked because when I showed this to someone in North Carolina, they loved it. And anytime I'd have a conversation about Mandy with my other film friends, they loved it. So it's one of these divides that I'm seeing now that it's like I don't know why I take movies so personally, but I feel like I have to come to my own defense when it comes to taste or opinion because I've dedicated my life to film. So when they didn't like it, it was like a blow to my taste, and I was shocked. But it opened my eyes to one of those divides where there's a regular viewer and then there's a cinephile. And everybody, for the most part, loves movies, but cinephiles are a select few that are just obsessed with movies. That, like me, where I couldn't do anything else if I tried. Even if I wanted to become a firefighter, I'd be thinking about firefighter movies. So again, I was fucking floored when Jordan and Daryush didn't like Mandy. And anyone out there listening, if you want to talk some shit, I'll drop their Instagram handles or phone numbers, maybe even an address, and I'll just dox them, and you can go fucking give them a piece of mind. Because Mandy, I thought, was fantastic. I was so into it. The reason I'm talking so much about this is because Pig is a lot like Mandy. Jay, Daryush, if you're listening, don't watch Pig, because your visual palates won't appreciate it. Anyone else listening, go watch Pig, because it's fantastic. Now we're going to get into spoiler area. And again, I think I get lost in the weeds on this podcast often, but basic synopsis, before spoiler, it's basic synopsis. Pig, Nicolas Cage plays a famous chef who gets his truffle pig stolen and goes on a quest to find it. For lack of a better word, that's the log line, and that's pretty much what happens. Now here's where we get spoiler heavy. So if you're watching, if you haven't seen Mandy or Pig, turn this off, don't ever talk to me. In Mandy, Nicolas Cage's wife gets kidnapped, and he has to go get her back. In Pig, Nicolas Cage's pig gets kidnapped, and he has to go get her back. Both of these films, just starting chronological order, if you've seen them both, you'll notice they have a similar intro drone shot where they're going over the Portland Pines, and it makes me wonder if Mandy was shot in Portland. It makes me wonder if Nicolas Cage has a specific connection to the West Coast, to the Northwest, because you could tell a lot about an actor's film choices. But right off the bat, very visually similar right there, plot-wise, a kidnapped love. And in this movie, Nicolas Cage does love this pig. And 3, spoiler alert, both of the kidnapped victims die in the process of being kidnapped. One of them, I think, is accidental. The other one's much more intentional. In Mandy, that happens, that's almost our inciting incident in Mandy when his wife dies, because then the rest of the film is him working on getting revenge, and you get thrown into this very entertaining revenge thriller. In Pig, however, you don't find out the pig is dead until the climax. That movie is so subtle that I'm not even exactly if the pig dying is the climax or what happens moments before is the climax. Very, very fantastic film. makes me want to bring up something called high concept and low concept. I was just talking to somebody about this recently. High concept films are Transformers, you know? Like, what if your car could transform into a robot? That's a high concept. Low concept films are a little more subtle and more moody. So, like a Blue Valentine, for example, would be fly on the walls perspective of a once passionate relationship slowly dying. You know, that would be a low concept thing. So, Mandy is a little high concept with its cult and it has like otherworldly demons it brings in. But Pig, on the other hand, is very low concept. And so I wanted to explain that before people took that out of concept. It's not like it's a simple plot, or maybe it is a simple plot. It's not like it's easy to do, is what I'm saying. It's not like they didn't think about it. What I really, really admire about this film, and here's the real meat of this episode, it does not treat the audience like it's stupid. It tells you what it is, and it starts to play the beats the way you're expecting. But the real shining moments is the character development. Immediately I'm thinking of the scene where Nicolas Cage goes and visits the baker and they start talking after a beautiful... First of all, the shot doesn't move at all. It's static the entire time and there's no cuts. It's very theatrical in that sense. It's very much like a play where the actors are left with the material and you get to see how they mold it and act and react to each other. I think a lesser filmmaker would have added more cuts. It would have been a much choppier scene because it was heavy with the dialogue, but they just let it play and it was gorgeous. 2, Alex motherfucking Wolf from the Naked Brothers band is in this movie, and my generation will know that show. I don't think my generation watched the show. I think we were becoming teenagers going into high school when it came out, and it was kind of lame, and it fucking sucks. The Naked Brothers band is this piece of shit show. I've never seen it, but I remember all the stupid songs that I don't want to go to school, yes it's true, I don't want to see the teacher's face no more. Like, that was on TV, and Nat and Alex Wolf were the Naked Brothers. And again, tangent, why Naked Brothers when they're kids? Why naked? Why bring in naked, first of all? 2, I don't know if he had anything to do with the show, but Dan Schneider did a lot of work on Nickelodeon while those two were there. And I don't think it's a Dan Schneider show, but I could have a whole nother... I'll save it for when I do Jurassic World 2. I feel like you should never have a kid in a film for the most part. To put it bluntly, there are various exceptions. But I don't think you should put kids in that grinder of an industry just so they could feel fame. I think acting should be like cigarettes. Like, I don't think anyone knows exactly what they're signing up for when they're a child actor. And again, there's River Phoenix's, Rose McGowan's that have happened. There's Lindsay Lohan's and Britney Spears and all that bad stuff that goes with it. And then and regular mental fatigue. Fuck the Naked Brothers band. I think was that thought. Alex Wolf, though, he keeps that spunkiness in Pig. It's very cool. He plays, I think he's just a food purchaser. He buys the truffles that Nicolas Cage finds and he sells them to the fine eating establishments. But God, his energy's still there. You could still feel that younger brotherness. They cast him really well. They cast him as a guy named Amir, which fits. And there was a great moment. God, one of my favorite moments, but he probably carried a lot of the film's visual or emotional baggage. And his relationship with his dad and his mom, incredible. But there's a scene where he's telling Nicolas Cage a little bit about himself, and he tells him that his mom killed herself. But it's done so well. And I don't know if it must be a combination of directing, casting, and acting, because again, I think lesser films, if they were to handle that material, they would just put emphasis on the suicide, or they'd leave a beat for the silence or something where it'd be very heavy, it'd be very Blue Valentine-y, it'd be very Nomadland-y, again, I haven't seen that film, I'm just talking shit, but it'd be something predictable. In this certain scene, and tell me if you recognize this, if you know what I'm talking about and have seen the film, Alex Wolff tells Nicolas Cage that his mom committed suicide, but there's a little bit of a stutter, and there's a beautiful lack of remorse. And I don't mean to say like, oh, he's cold and his mom just died. It's such a human scene, because I've met people who've lost their older brothers or have lost a family member or someone major, and I didn't know that till like months later. You know, my friend, his mom passed, and I didn't know till a year later on a hiking trip. And the entire year it got me thinking like, damn, he was holding that pain so well. And that's what I really felt from Alex's performance in Pig. He has so much bottled under the surface, but he knows, as a human being, man, his age, he's not done grinding yet. He's kind of like me. He's still in his like military years, quote unquote. I think that's the right term, like the Marine age years, where it's like this should be the most productive a man is in his life. And he knows that he has to keep working Amir's character, or Amir the character. So when he discloses that info to Nicolas Cage, it's you could feel it. It feels like a human saying it. Like, he wants to tell Nick Cage a little bit about himself so they can connect and they can both continue on about their professional relationship. But that pain is so palpable, but even more palpable is Alex's insistence on hiding the pain beneath the surface. And I think that's so human. And there's many times he does that in the film. Lastly, the final scene, the climax, we learn that Alex's dad, Amir's dad, is also in the same business that Alex does. They're kind of competitors in that sense. And we learn that the dad stole Nicolas Cage's pig, or had paid people to steal them. But up until that point, we just know he's a rich, one-dimensional douchebag, and he's the father to Alex. And Nicolas Cage is, you know, a moral, quiet loner. But what's so fantastic about this film, it's right then he's I forget his name, but the dad tells Nick Cage, go home, you're not getting your pig back, for more or less words. Nick Cage meets up with Alex Wolff one more time, and then he asks him what he's doing, or what the plan is, and he goes, I'm gonna cook a meal, and we're gonna get my pig back. And long story short, Nick Cage cooks the meal that Alex's parents ate so many years ago before Alex's mom went into a coma. And that meal, we learned earlier in the film, was such a highlight of Alex's parents' life that when the father takes a bite of Nick Cage's cooking, it's the same meal, and he breaks down in tears because he's brought back to that moment with his wife. And that was such a powerful scene. That's great filmmaking right there, because we're in this new world of fine dining in Portland, of truffle farming, and, you know, and theft and petty theft, but not many times in a movie do you get to see people having a really forced, fancy 5-star dinner, very tension-filled and not much dialogue, and then after the man eats a few bites, he breaks down in tears. And then realizing, going back to the smart audience thing, realizing, oh, that's the meal that Nick Cage made so many years ago. That is such a fantastic way to slay the dragon, so to say. You know, the bad guy's the dragon. And it was so smart. Instead of like, oh, we're just gonna muscle up and knock heads till we get this pig back. It's not that kind of movie. You realize Nick Cage has to be a spiritual warrior and think outside the box and hit this guy, hit his spirit more than his actual physical body. And damn, that gut punch to the spirit was incredible. And the only other movie I could think that does that is Old Boy, but in a much more horrific, shocking way, where the gut punch, the spiritual punch in that film is worse than any of the violent scenes that took place before. but this one's a little more holistic. And I want to even say necessary. After COVID and all the years we've had and all this mess we're in, I really recommend Pig for this reason. It's very, it makes you appreciate things you didn't appreciate. I really wish I had a better soundbite for that, but it really makes you appreciate a good performance, a good meal, and good dialogue, and good little scenes. Man, there are some very, very fantastic scenes, very well acted out in this film. I can't really think of anything wrong with it. I will say I did not understand the bare knuckle boxing chef thing in the basement at the hotel. Maybe that's something I'm just not privy to. And I meant to say privy earlier instead of savvy, but privy, it's a much better word. So I don't know much about that. That was a little jarring and confusing. I already want to rewatch this film, and I already want to push people to watch it because of these great performances and unique story, and I think it's good. So thank you for listening. If you have any requests or movies I should see, or if you want to be on the podcast, I am gearing up to have sessions going on in the garage now that we have a more functional studio. So thank you again, guys. I am Chuck Roque. This is Reely, presented by Flix Fan Official. Have a good one.